Hey, this is Ben, and I'm out here because I wanted to follow up on a little bit of discussion we've been having on the podcast. So if you don't know what podcast I'm talking about, it is called Woods to Ridges. You can go to woods2ridges.com. It's the number 2 in the middle. Or just go anywhere you listen to podcasts, go to Woods to Ridges and just search it there. We have several episodes up already. Scott and I have been kicking around this project for a while, and we've been talking about the sap and syrup situation for the spring, because the last 2 years I've been making my own syrup. We have about 6 acres on a different property that has a bunch of maple trees, and works out pretty well. So I wanted to give you a little extra from what we had in the podcast. But here's the deal. So I do this, and it's not the most efficient way. And it is meant to be for somebody who is doesn't have a lot of time, maybe doesn't have the ability to be burning something, maybe doesn't have works all the time, has little kids running around, whatever it is. A lot of times you don't have all day to at least be home managing the burning situation or the boiling situation. So I go from it from the perspective of that I can do something, I can get it on cooking for a couple hours and be efficient that way. So it's not the cheapest, and it's probably not the best way to make a ton of syrup. Roughly it takes 40-45 gallons of sap out of the tree to make a gallon of syrup. And each year, last year I did about probably 2 gallons, 2.5 gallons of syrup. This year it'll probably be about the same. So I'm not making a ton. It's enough to give away a little bit and then use a bunch. I use it for everything during the year. And so I just wanted to give you a little rundown. What I'm doing right here is I am finishing up the last run of the season. So I wanted to I've cooked this down from several different buckets I have sitting behind me. And I'm getting down to the end here, and I wanted to get it on fire for a few hours just to get some smoke into it, get some flavor into it, a little bit more than just the plain propane. It is the last run, and it is darker. So that, and to back up a little bit on that, is as the season progresses, the syrup tends to get darker, and there's several reasons, or a couple of reasons for that. But microbes in the sap that come out of the tree actually take the sugar, the simple sugar, the glucose, and they will turn some into fructose and sucrose. So the sugar breaks down a little bit from these microbes, and depending on the temperature, how long it's been sitting, whatever, as the season goes along, there's more microbes. Therefore, there's different types of sugar, cooks down differently, and you'll get a thicker, darker syrup. This year, for some reason, started off light from not very long, and then just got dark right away. And this is probably the darkest syrup that I've had yet. It's black, and it's fantastic. It's my favorite. But yeah, so anyway, this batch I want to get it on the smoke. But what I've been doing for the last 2 years to do the quick, efficient, not so cheap way of doing it, it's not terrible, but it's not the cheapest way, I'll take you over here to my setup right here. You can see I have a propane tank, and I have a Stansport camp stove. And then off to the left, you can see I got a big, I think it was 80,000 BTU stove, but I'll explain that in a second. So here's the scoop. Propane tank. They're roughly 40 bucks. If you don't have one of these, if you don't have a grill, gas grill or something like that, they're about 40 bucks at wherever, hardware store, gas stations, all over the place. If you do have them, if you don't want to pay that, you can always, Craigslist has a lot of that kind of junk. So you can go on there, probably get one for 15 bucks. Maybe your neighbor has one. I don't know. There's all kinds of them around. But exchange it anywhere from, I get this exchange for, it's like $14.50 or $14.60 or something, but ranges in price from 14 to 18 bucks. You probably get on a stove like this anywhere from, I think I get 12 to 15 hours, just depends on how blasting I have it. But yeah, you can cook a ton with that. And the reason I like it is once you get up to temperature, which does take a little bit of time, you can just turn this thing on and off and just cook it for 2-3 hours. Let the bucket sit, or let the pot sit, and it'll be warm. You can come back after you did something for an hour, come back, crank it up, and turn it on for the rest of the night as you're sitting in the house doing whatever you're doing. So that's why I really like that. It's quick, it's efficient. As far as that, you don't have to start a fire and be hanging around all day. So that's why I like it. Just not in a position right now to just be sitting around all day and doing that. Next year, I think I'll work on getting that going and have a little bit more efficient operation so I can double the amount of syrup I'm producing. But this Stansport grill, I think each one of those burners is 25,000 BTUs. It works really well. I would say anything less and you might have a little bit of trouble getting it going, getting it up to heat. It'll take a while. It might take 2 hours to get a full 10 gallons, 8 gallons. So you might want to start with a little less. But the reason I really like the stove, and the Coleman ones just don't seem as beefy, is this burner and that grate right there can hold pretty much that whole pot. So that's why I really like it. That burner over there, it's good to get it up to temperature. It just cranks the heat. It's like a turkey burner or a turkey fryer burner kind of deal. But it gets it up to heat. However, it uses a ton of propane. If I have that thing cranking, get you set up here. If I have that big burner cranking, I can go through that propane tank in probably 3 hours. Whereas it'll go through, like I said, 12, 15 hours in that little burner and just boil right through all the sap. So it works well. But yeah, I mean, I go through, I don't know how many tanks you end up going through to burn all that sap. Because it does take, I think I've discussed this on the podcast, but it takes roughly 40, 45 gallons of sap out of the tree to get about a gallon of syrup. So, and actually, while I'm at it, since I think I've discussed this on the podcast as well, but here's the setup. So CDL makes these cool, it's called a sack holder. And this is that little spout that comes out of the tree is called a spile. You tap that in the tree, drill a hole, tap that in the tree. And then this is the top piece. And right here is sorry, I keep looking over there and I'm at home and the kids are running around before and they're probably looking for me right now. This is a bag. It costs probably 60, 70 cents. These CDL ones, there's also just generic ones you can get at hardware store here has them because a lot of people do this. But you can order online too, real easy. And it has this piece in here, and you fold this around. Pretty slick. And it's very durable. You could clean it anytime you want. Very durable plastic, and then it just hangs on there like this. I will say the only downside is it keeps everything out, keeps water out. The only downside to this is if it's windy and you're in an open spot, it does tend to blow off if there's no sap in it. So that's the downside. The upside is this thing holds a ton of liquid and it doesn't fall off, it doesn't rip. It's very durable and it's easy, cheap, and I really like them. I do have one tree that's out in the open. The rest are in the woods, one's out in the open and it just tends to fall down. So you could always put a little weight in there, maybe stick a clean rock or something in the bottom. That would probably work if you don't tend to them very often. That's about it. So yeah, but that's the scoop. This is the setup for your average person who doesn't have time to, doesn't have all this, maybe have some type of equipment to, gotta get that going there. Some equipment to be cooking big batches. Maybe you have a big pot and a camp stove. You could probably do it on a grill even. I wouldn't recommend doing it in your house because it will get very humid and smell and yeah. Finish it, yes, but yeah. So that's it. And actually, you know what? While I mention that, since I'm here, I don't think I'll do another video. But finishing it means that I'll get it down to maybe 2 gallons of liquid, and I will take it in the house, put it through some filters and into a bucket, and then I'll put it in a couple big pans and stick it on the stove and just finish it until it gets to that syrup point. I do have, you can use a hydrometer to test it, but what I do have a hydrometer, but at this point you can get it pretty close to the point where it's it's boiling, and all of a sudden you'll start seeing bubbles come up, and you can't stop the bubbles. That's at the point, generally speaking, at the point you can stop, and it's probably pretty good. And then just stick it in some jars or whatever you have. Maybe an old peanut butter jar or a pickle jar or something. Save your old ones, and that works pretty well. I think that's it. So if you have any questions, comments, or anything about the podcast, syrup, just doing it for your average person, no big deal. Just let me know. And yeah, so I'll keep doing some videos of some follow-up stuff we discuss in the podcast, because it's fun, and you know, I obviously need some practice doing it, and it's a good way to share some of the tips and tricks and things that I've done along the way. And my whole point of this is to be that I'm not an expert at it. I'm learning just right along with you, and yeah, I'm just sharing it. So if you have any questions, let me know. Woods to Ridges. You can go subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. Woods, the number 2, Ridges. My buddy Scott and I keep cranking that out. You can go to woods2ridges.com as well. That'll take you to the show page. And I think that's it. So thank you very much. And hopefully the snow melts off soon. It is April 15th, and just snowed the other day. And that's it. See ya.